because I'm still struggling. You see? So the definitive answer, I think, to the question of who are you as a Christian is sort of simple. You are alive in Christ, yet still struggling with sin. And that answer to the question sort of frames our Christian life and gives us a window into understanding everything that especially the Apostle Paul wrote to other believers about their Christianity. Who are you? You are a person who is alive in Christ and all that means, but someone who still struggles with sin, struggles with temptation, struggles against anger, struggles against worry, struggles against being mean to other people when they cut you off in traffic. You know, you're that kind of a person. You're a person who struggles with your mouth and controlling it and not shooting off your mouth and saying something that tomorrow you regret. So in every way that the sinful nature can manifest itself in our lives, we're subject to it. Now, I have friends who their main struggle is alcohol. They like to drink and get drunk. That's not my struggle. I've never wanted to drink. I don't even like drinking. The only thing in the world that I like drinking that's alcoholic is right here in Bali. It's Bintang Radler Orange.
Yes.
Okay? And if you don't like that, you're not human, okay? Because like that is just like the most amazing stuff ever. And I don't even like to drink, but I like Bintang Radler, okay? And people say, well, that's because you just like the orange taste. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I just like the orange taste. The alcohol content, I don't care about that. But I have some friends who really struggle. They seriously struggle with alcoholism. And that's not my struggle, but that's their struggle. So when we say that someone is struggling with sin or struggling against the flesh, that's going to look different for each person. And we have to understand that. Some people seem like their mouth is so controlled, they never say naughty things. I have some friends from college, and two of them one of my friends from college married this most wonderful man. And after staying in their house when I was going around speaking in churches, raising money to be a missionary, I looked at this family and I honestly wondered, do they ever have an argument? Do they ever say anything that's like not perfectly nice? Because after staying with them, I thought, you're too nice. Either you're putting on a really good show for the missionary, and I'm going to give you a 10, a perfect 10, all right? Either you're putting on the best show for the missionary I've ever seen, or you're just that way. And you know what I realized? They're just that way.
Wow.
That really is the way they are. They don't struggle in that way, but they have different struggles. And it's in other places. So we're tempted to look at sin and think, well, there's big sins. And then there's little sins. And then there's the sins you have to tell if you want to stay married. Honey, do you like my hair? Oh, it's lovely. You know, you told a little bit of a white lie right there. But if you didn't, you wouldn't stay married. So there's different kinds of...
You can just say a blind man would be so happy to see that.
A blind man would be happy to see anything, Jimbo. But we have to be careful that we understand what we mean by sin. We're not just talking about alcoholism. We're not just talking about falling into sexual immorality or impurity. We're not just talking about someone who likes to curse or something like that. We're talking about sin as being a manifestation of a life that's apart from God versus people who are now in relationship to God, who, because we live in a body, still struggle against it. But that's not who you really are now. So the problem with Christians is they're in an identity crisis. They don't know who they are. There are only two kinds of people in the world. You're either in sin, and that's the way God says it and sees it, or you're in Christ. And if you're in Christ, you still struggle against sin, but your identity is no longer in sin. So it doesn't mean you can't fall into it. Yes, you can fall into it, but it means that who you are, the main characteristic of your life, is one who's been touched by God's power. So something has happened, and in some way you can say, I feel what it feels to be made alive by Jesus. But not only that, it means that as a new believer, we're constantly looking at Jesus and his resurrection and his ascension to be the place where we go when we know we have to transform. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the fact that as human beings, we know what's wrong. Like, I cuss too much. All right, I'm sorry. I have a dirty mouth. I have to stop it. And where do I go to stop it? Do I try harder? See, that's what people in the world do. That's what good people do. They try harder. They take a self-help course on how to control your tongue. Okay? That's not what the Christian does. The Christian says, well, this is not who I am. Now, Jesus, let me live out of your power. Jesus, let me live out of your strength. So the whole way in which we transform, the whole way in which we do the good things that we're supposed to do is different for the Christian because it involves looking to Jesus and drawing power from him. And that's very, very relevant. And if you understand this, it changes the way you think about who you are and who other people are as well. Now, if I would have asked somebody who knows you, who are you? How would they have asked? How would they have answered if I asked someone who knows you? Well, if they're not a Christian especially, they would not have said some of these things that Paul says right here. And they wouldn't see the potential that you have for transformation because Christ is in you and you're seated with Christ. They would focus in on, oh, well, you're that grumpy person who cusses when you're driving. Or you're that person who likes to drink too much. Or you're that person who loves to go out and hang out with the ladies on the weekends and do naughty things. So they would focus in on something else. And one of our problems as Christians in understanding our identity, it's the fact that everybody around us is not looking at us the way God does as being in Christ. They're most likely focusing in on what's wrong. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Your employer comes to do an evaluation. You are impatient with the children in class. And so there's sorry, I can point at anybody. It's just the general point.
Okay.
But my point is that people in the world, they're not going to view you this way. And because of that, it causes you sometimes to wonder, who am I? I'm just that messed up person who messed up my demo teaching, last week in school. So it's very important for us to understand who we are as God says, so that we don't listen to who other people tell us we are. And sometimes we don't even listen to our condemning conscience telling us how messed up we are. Because the depressed person, the mentally ill person often, is a person who's listening to self-talk and they're focusing in on the negative, okay? And we shouldn't do that.
With all of your experience in China, Taiwan, I've noticed a big difference